All right, update. You guys may have heard me already say it on the radio. Injury-wise, the Christian Benford, Micah Hyde will not practice. Terrell Bernard remains in the concussion protocol. Jordan Poyer, Leonard Floyd will be back at practice today. And Balin Spector and A.J. Klein will be out there at practice as well.
Sean, I know you talked about it a little bit on WGR just a few minutes ago, but why has this team been so great at Highmark Stadium this season? They're undefeated, but if you look at the stats, those have been amazing as well.
Yeah, I think that they just take a lot of pride. Our guys take a lot of pride in playing at home, playing in Western New York in front of our fans, and we try and establish that early, especially with the new players who haven't been here before, and how important that is, and how much this team means to the fans in the city and the community here, and people come out to watch us, and sometimes it's due to holidays, but you also sense that some of these schools are, taking half days on Mondays or Thursday nights anymore, and I think that's pretty cool that that football and the Bills mean that much to the fans here.
And how good is it to be back at home, coming off of a loss, knowing that you're going to be home for 2 straight weeks, and can hopefully use being at home to get things going consistently again?
Yeah, we'll take it one game at a time, Maddie. But it is nice to know that we're not then going back on the road the game after this. It's nice to be home a little bit and play our best at home.
With Michael listed as both stinger and neck, is that a re-injury of his neck injury from last year, or is that something different?
Again, I don't want to misquote what's going on there, but it is an injury of that type. But I don't think to that extent as it was last year that forced him to miss the remainder of the season after the first game there, I believe it was.
With that in mind, do you have a projection for him for this week? I know it's early.
I don't. Yeah, we just have to take it one game at a time here, one day at a time, excuse me.
What stands out about Javonte Williams, number 33 for the Broncos, as a running back?
Good running back, very powerful, gets his pads square to the line of scrimmage. He does a good job, and it doesn't surprise me with their system and their offensive line.
For Jordan Poyer, it seems like he's trending that he will play, and if so, this will be his 100th game with the Bills. What has he meant to y'all over that time?
I remember standing or sitting or wherever I was, whatever I was doing here, was it 7 years ago, I guess, right? And having signed in free agency, both Mike and Jordan, and what they've been able to do, and what they've been able to experience with them, with their careers, and watching them grow and develop. And I've looked back at some old film, and they were just young pups back then, and kind of wet behind the ears. And now here they are, kind of the veterans of our group. And we've been through so many memories. In 2017, the experience in Miami, making the playoffs for the first time, and then AFC Championship game, and those guys have or had a big hand in helping us get there.
Jordan, you just mentioned he has such that veteran presence now. Eric Washington, when we were talking to him about how y'all are using Jordan a little differently, was saying he still gets excited for those new challenges on the football field. Mm-hmm. Where do you see that show up of, hey, we're going to use you a little differently, but he embraces that?
Well, I think, again, that's probably a better question for him, but I sense that. I sense just an uptick in his energy level when we put him down at that dime position, and it's embracing a new challenge, and I think something that he also enjoys, being closer to the line, mixing things up, and he's a smart football player to boot, so I think it works well for him.
This earlier in the season with the defensive injuries, but what's the challenge for you with the number of guys on the defense dealing with injuries, as a coordinator planning the game? What is that challenge like for you, having to figure out we might have him, we might not have him, and continuing to adapt to that?
Well, I think honestly, injuries are a part of the game, right? And I look forward to some of the challenge. I really do. I think that's that word challenge, and probably for all of us is it's not something you shy away from. The challenging part of the challenge in this case with the injuries is the gray area sometimes, is, hey, this player is going to play, and then all of a sudden they're not going to play. They may not pass concussion protocol, say, and then when you have young players that are affected by that, sometimes it's hard to forecast, hey, you're going to get this position and the reps at this position, and then all of a sudden then they're not playing that position, they're forced to play another position. And so So, I think injuries are one thing, but injuries to starters are another thing, and I think we've had our fair share of those. And but I'm, like I've said before, extremely proud of the way the coaches and the players have handled it.
From a communication perspective, if someone like Terrell can't go and it is Tyrell kind of in that spot, like communicating the plays to the rest of the defense, do you practice that? What's that like shifting who's doing that and not knowing who it might be?
Yeah, again, contingency plans, you try and forecast. That's why communication with our training staff, Nate in this case, is so important early in the week, where you try and say, hey, I know he's not going to be able to practice this day, for example, but what's your gut say about, is he going to be available for the game? Because, for example, at linebacker, going into really yesterday's practice, I think we only had 3 linebackers healthy. So now it's, we'll see where it goes today. And we've tried to rep things, honestly, with it could go this way or it could go that way, like walk through today in particular, and then we'll have a different lineup out of practice just to try and give us the best chance, because we don't know what it might look like come game time there.
In 2021, you guys were 7-6. I know that was later point in the season than you are now, but can you draw on any of those experiences when you guys faced that adversity and maybe use them now? You ran the table and won the rest of your games that year.
Yep. No, that's a good point, and yes to your question overall. And I think there's players in particular who were here with us then. I mean, even in 2017, when we lost three games in a row and we go and make the playoffs, when the organization hadn't been there in 17 years. It happens every year. Like I mentioned yesterday, where you're 13, we've had our fair share of a couple of years of 13-3 also, when you're like, it's a grind and you feel like you're 0-10 because you're just trying to figure things out. And but you look up and you're like, hey, we end up 13-3. But last year as well, when I think we lost to Minnesota prior to the Jets, maybe back-to-back Jets and then Minnesota, and you're like, man. But you figure things out. And again, not to say that we've won the Super Bowl since we've been here. That is the ultimate goal. But we try and take it one game at a time. And you do use those experiences to make you better, because there are players who haven't been through this, rookies or maybe even veteran free agents who haven't been on a winning team, and they've been through this summer before, where you're not able to pull yourself out of it or find the way to get yourself to a winning spot. So I think all of it is experience, and it's good for us, and it starts with leadership and trying to educate the players on those that haven't been here, how this works and how you can get yourself out of it, and then as well as the players who are here, is reestablishing how we do things. So
A little off topic, but Vaughn talking yesterday about how he's going to face Broncos for the first time since he left Denver, talked about winning Super Bowl there. What do you remember about what Vaughn did in that game?
Yeah, I remember that rather clearly. He changed the game. I mean, Vaughn, a great example of what you're talking about earlier. That season, I think we were 13-0, 14-0 at one point, and we lost one game. But we ended up, I think it was 15-1 in 16-game season. But even though we were winning, it's like, it's not good enough. Every week it's like, man, what's wrong with us? You didn't win by more than 7. What's wrong with you? Or more than 3. That's case in point, right? Just of our season that year, and then that Super Bowl, Vaughn was public enemy number 1 before and after that game, because he was Von Miller. He went off, and that's the type of player he is when he's healthy. And I know he's fighting like crazy to get back to that level.
Sean, how much do you embrace the offensive players sort of taking ownership yesterday in meeting amongst themselves to reset?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You talk about leadership and accountability, 2 words that are very important to me, and you need player-driven leadership, and you need player-driven accountability as well. And I think it's a great example of both. I think it's a great example of a player who's not a captain. And quite honestly, he probably would have been a captain had he been here longer. But a player who's been around, who's a winner, a man of high character and a pro, and he is doing what needs to be done. And we spoke, Tay and I, on, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and I appreciate that. It's not anything going on, behind closed doors. It's from a like, hey, I'm going to do something that nobody knows about. It's just, hey, he was disclosed it to me, and in full transparency, and he went out and communicated it to his teammates. And again, it's just like I've told you before. We're working hard at it, and we're drilling down every hole that we can. Sometimes you find something, sometimes you don't, but you drill down the next hole, and that's what we've been doing. No different when we were 7-6 a few years ago. No different Super Bowl year in Carolina. No different. Von mentioned the other day, speaking of Von, that they were at the Rams, and they didn't win the month. They lost, I think, the month of November. They went winless or something like that. And so very rarely do you come out and is it smooth sailing the whole year? You'd like it to be, but you fight through it. That's what winners do.
You mentioned with Latavius that you feel like he could have been a captain if he were here sooner. When did you get that sense that he was going to have that role on this team of leadership?
Yeah, I mean, you just watch him go about his work, how he handles things. You get a chance to be around his family, quite honestly. Got a tremendous family and support system behind him, and you watch him a little bit. I get a chance to watch him a little bit as a dad and as a husband, and he's a class act. And but what happens in this league is guys aren't around typically long enough to establish that in order to get all those votes. So, but it is important that people lead, even though they don't have the C on their chest.
To jump back to
Go ahead. I'll give you one more.
Go ahead.
Rox,
Sean Payton was asked about you yesterday. He said that Jim Johnson would probably be laughing at his staff trying to figure out your pressures.
Yeah.
All these years later, how much do you lean on what you learned from Jim when you're trying to plug holes because of injuries, because of adversity?
Yeah, Jim was the best. I mean, he was the best at what he did and taught me well, and I learned so much from him. And the one thing I remember about Jim was he just kept bringing the pressure. That's what he did, and it didn't matter because he was not very fond of opposing quarterbacks. So anyway, thanks, guys.